It is now 5:31 p.m. and I call this meeting of the Fair Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members are present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Please stand.
Please bow your heads. Gracious God, we thank you for the opportunity to serve our schools. We thank you for the many blessings you put in our district, all the wonderful people, the staff, just everyone who helps our children. We ask for your wisdom and discernment as we discuss the challenges and opportunities before us. Help us to see with your eyes and to act with your love. May our decisions reflect your will and lead to a thriving and vibrant school community. Lord, we do have a vibrant school community, and we have so many wonderful opportunities that you've also blessed us with. Be with all those in our community, those who are not feeling well, those who have lost loved ones, and we thank you again for all the wonderful students and people in this wonderful community. We ask this in your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, one indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, and one indivisible.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Do we have anyone that has signed up for public comment? No. Thank you, Ms. Ramos. It is now 5:33 p.m. and we are closing the regular board meeting to an open public meeting discussing the proposed budget for school year 25-26. Mr. Cespedes?
Yes. Thank you, Board President Castillo, Superintendent Mrs. Torres, board members present, and everybody here. I'll be going over our proposed budget for the 25-26 fiscal year. I'll be going over through some of the slides. And then once at the end of the presentation, if you all have any questions or need any other information, I can address that. So I'll be our estimated revenues and appropriations for the 25-26 fiscal year. As you can see, the way we break it down, we have in our local maintenance and our food service, that makes up our general funds. And so the total for that we're estimating in our revenues would be $39,596,036. And of course, in our interest and sinking, that's where we pay all of our bonded debt. That we're estimating to collect $2,885,338. So the total for all our revenue sources for the 25-26 fiscal year would be $42,481,374. And that number you'll be seeing quite a bit as we go through everything. That's how we tie it. Everything will be tying to the total revenues. Next slide. So here we wanted to list several factors, right, that impacted our budget. These are things that we look at throughout the year. Some of these figures or numbers we calculate and we estimate. Some of these are numbers that we've already received, definite numbers. So for the first, if you do a couple more slides. So for the first four rows right there, this is our estimated certified tax roll. Remember that we don't get our certified tax roll from the county appraisal district until mid-July. So this is something that Mr. Cavazos and I had worked on along with the funding template to see what this is going to look like. And of course, there was a lot of updates and changes with recent legislation, and I'll kind of go over that in a bit. If you see right there, our estimated certified tax roll is about $866 million. If we compare that to our certified tax roll from last year, that was about a 10% increase in property values, right? We do have a very good collection rate here with the district. It's around 97.5%. And our tax rate, remember, right now it's just a proposed tax rate. We won't be bringing the tax rate for adoption until September. And right now, if we look at our total tax rate, we're looking at around $1. So that is made up of our M&O, which is around 0.7131, and our INS, which is around 28 cents, 28.7. And again, as we go on, I'll be getting a little bit more into detail and discussing those a little bit more. And the overall change to the tax rate, you know, we're looking to see maybe about a 4%, 4-cent increase in our total tax rate compared to last year's adopted tax rate. Our student ADA, that's something that, you know, we have to calculate. Obviously, as the year goes on, we monitor it, we'll make sure that we look at student enrollment, student attendance, because again, we get funded based on our student attendance. Our ADA for this past year was around 2580, so that's what we're looking at to target for next year. Our attendance rate was around 93%, which was actually almost a 0.5% increase from last year, so that was really good. We hope to see that continuing to go up. Some of the other things that we took into consideration, we did have a decrease in our property insurance of about $100,000. And of course, as y'all know, you know, with the closing of one school, through some attrition and some savings in some positions, you know, we're able to save about $150,000. I'll also be going over again a little bit, but some of the highlights that we have, we're proposing to increase the starting pay for our teachers to $52,500. And of course, as y'all know, with the passing of House Bill 2, they did provide some additional funding for teacher raises. Now, for the teachers 1 to 2 years experience, we are proposing a $2,100 increase. That's not funded by the state, that would be funded through our district funds. And then the, yes. And then, of course, teachers, 3 to 4 years, it's $4,000 increase, and any teachers with 5 years plus, it would be 8,000 years. And again, all of this, I'll talk a little bit more briefly in the next couple of slides. We're also proposing for the board, you know, for our professional administrators, a 3% increase off the midpoint. And for all of our auxiliary, our hourly staff, our paras, a 4% increase off the midpoint. All of this would be about, you know, with the salaries, of course, you come taxes and benefits, so we're looking at about 167,000. And of course, our health insurance increase, that's something that we're also proposing to increase. Right now, the district pays $353 per month per employee for the health insurance. And that's something that we've incorporated into the budget, and of course, we will bring that to you all in July for you all to look at and to approve to increase that. But we have incorporated into our budget. And then, of course, overall, in our operating budget, the rest of our budget that is not salary, we were able to do some reductions and reduce it to $220,000. On the next slide, again, these are some of the things that I was talking about, new state legislation. All of this comes from House Bill 2. We didn't state all of them, but these were some of the major highlights. Of course, the increase in our basic allotments, it got increased by $55. An increase to our small and mid-sized district allotment there, we're getting about $252,000 there. The new allotment for basic costs, that's the additional basic costs allotment. The district will be getting around $300,000 for there, and all these assist us with some of these other increases that we've done to some of these other hourly employees, some of our paras, some of our non-teachers positions. An increase in our safety allotment, that's another one that we also got. It's increased from $10 per student to $20 per student, and now it's gone from $15,000 per campus. Legislation increased that to $33,540 per campus. So that's really good news for additional safety funding. Again, the big one was the teacher retention allotment. That's the new staff allotment for increases for teachers. And again, that one targeted teachers for 3 to 4 years experience, and then all teachers with more than 5 years experience. And of course, where you are getting guidance from TA, right, on what constitutes a classroom teacher. And again, this is for their base pay. They didn't give us funding for that to cover for their benefits and taxes and things like that. Another one was the new staff allotment for non-administrators. Again, as we were talking about, similar to the allotment for additional basic costs, we did get an allotment for non-administrators. And of course, that would include all of our staff that's not a non-administrator, like our counselors, nurses, librarians, our hourly staff, our food service custodians, our paras, things like that. And one of the ones that we saw that's really good that will benefit our district, since we are in a coastal county, is they did add a property insurance allotment. As you all know, in the past years, our property insurances have been going up and up, especially for the coastal county districts. So that's something that was lobbied and pushed pretty hard in the recent legislation, and they were able to provide an allotment for that, to help us with that, offset that cost.
Do you know what that is?
For ours, it's gonna be approximately around 61,000. So we go on to the next one, is just revenues by type. Again, as I mentioned earlier, what I'll be talking about a lot is the total, the $42.4 million. Here's just a breakdown of where our revenue comes to different sources, right? And of course, your three main sources is your local, your state, and your federal revenue sources. So in your local, of course, our biggest one is our local property tax collections. So that's about $7.2 million, and that's collections that we get based on the tax rate that y'all adopt, and on the certified tax roll that we get, that's what we'll be able to collect those, and that's both for the M&O and to pay our bonded debt.
And our federal went down about 200,000, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, and that's a little bit down here as well. So in the next one, that's the property taxes, that's our local revenue and our state revenues. We're estimating to collect around 31.1 million. And if you can see on that one in the middle, that's about an increase of about 3.2 million from last year, and again, that's given to House Bill 2. And as Mrs. Torres alluded, in our federal revenues, we expect to collect about 3.4 million. It is a reduction of about 200,000 from last year, and that's a combination of things like our SARS program, we're not getting
Title.
funding. And of course, in some of our federal programs like Title and some of our others, they have been reduced a bit.
Mr. Cespedes,
Yes, ma'am.
under miscellaneous, I noticed that there was a decrease. What kind of revenues would that be?
So there, remember that we reduced our investment income. So for example, all our money, we have it in an investment pool, and it generates interest.
Okay.
So interest for the last year or so, they've been, kind of high. We do expect them to start coming down a little bit. So we're just, being a little bit conservative,
Okay.
and we estimate a little bit less collecting in investment interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And again, all of the three different sources that I talked to, this is just a breakdown of those. So again, in our property taxes, we collect about almost $7 million in current. In delinquent, it's about 110,000, and penalty and interest about 175,000, for a total of 7.2 million that we collect from our local property tax collections. We go on to the next one, the miscellaneous revenues. And in those are ones that we're talking about. Again, this is just a breakdown on it. From athletics, we get about 113,000. That's any type of gate receipts or any other admissions to other games, things like that. In our food service, it's about 67,000. That's for any meals that are paid either by students or by some of our employees that buy their lunch here. Interest income, that's the one I was just talking to you about, Ms. Castillo. And that's again where we have our money sitting there, generates interest, and this is what we're calculating to generate. And then of course others, just other miscellaneous income that we get throughout the year. That also would include some of our tuition fees that we might have. I know that, again, legislation passed, so some of those will now be free, but those are the ones that we're looking at. So this is about a total of 652,000. If we go on to the next slide, these are our state revenues. And of course, that's our biggest funding source, right? And here's just a breakdown of all the different allotments, right? And of course, our biggest one that we have is our regular program allotment. That's about $8.8 million. Of course, we have our special ed, about 3.5 million, our state comp, about 3.7 million, our CTE is another big one that we received, 3.4. And of course, the allotments towards the bottom, some of those are your new ones. Like your basic cost allotment, your teacher retention allotment. You see the teacher retention allotment toward the bottom, the 1.3 million? That's the additional funding that we're getting that I was talking about for the teacher raises. And then, of course, our support staff allotment and others.
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
What is tier 2 state aid?
So our tier two state aid, it's a little bit of a calculation that we get from the WADA. And so that's just additional funding that we get from the state, but it takes into consideration a lot of these other programs. Not all of them, but it takes some of them into consideration. It's multiplied by the weighted average daily attendance.
Is that like our bilingual, if we get $1 for a regular student, we might get $1.10. So it's a little bit more, and that's why it's called weighted average daily attendance, because you get a little bit more for our special pops sometimes.
Actually, more interesting, I'm glad you said that, ma'am, but I didn't want to talk about this, I was limited. But for example, like in our basic allotment, right, that was increased by $55. It was not really a new funding, they just took it out of tier 2 and they put it in our basic allotment.
So it
And that's
wasn't-
good and
it
bad,
wasn't
right, because
extra
in the
money.
tier 2, you generate more money because of your I don't wanna get too technical, but because of your, again, your WADA, your golden penny yields, we would actually generate more if they would've left it there. No, go ahead, sir.
It's based on, also on the property wealth per student. So the poorer the district is, the more tier two funds they can generate. The richer school districts, they get recaptured, so some of their dollars goes back to the state. But the tier two, that's one of the, and the WADA,
Right.
as well.
And that's something that Mr. Gauss and I were talking about, right? Some of these allots, and I'll mention a couple other allotments that were actually taken out of tier two. And that's what we're talking about, how, this is gonna affect your poorer districts and not so much your rich districts. And, the other two were the school safety allotments. You know how I mentioned earlier, they increased that one per student and per campus. That actually used to be in a tier one subchapter C, they moved it to a subchapter D. Long story short, we can't generate tier two from it. Back then, we were able to generate some tier two money off of it as well.
Thank you.
So do we have numbers somewhere, we can get like what our tier two was last year, or?
Yeah, we can definitely, I can get those numbers. Next one. And this is a breakdown of our federal revenues. The first three are mostly for our food service nutrition, the school breakfast, the National School Lunch Program, and our summer feedings, and the USDA commodities. Those were for about a total of 3.2 million. And of course, our SHARs, that one's gone down significantly. We only expect to generate maybe $50,000. And our indirect cost on grants. So remember, a lot of our federal grants, we're able to take a small percentage in indirect cost rate and be able to use that, for regular operations. So the total of that was about $3.4 million. That comes from federal revenues. And this is just a pie chart. Again, this kind of just gives us a little bit more perspective, right? That, as you know, the majority of our funding for our school district comes from the state. It's about 3/4. And from our local revenues, again, the majority from our property taxes, we get about 18%. So again, our school district, heavily relies on state aid to be able to continue our operations. So next is appropriations. Again, this is, once we calculated the estimated revenues, now we're able to appropriate it into our budget, right? And this is what allows us to present you a balanced budget. And again, from our appropriations, as I mentioned earlier, right, the three different funds is our food service, our general fund, and our debt service. So again, as I was saying earlier, that's your total that will be generated, that will be budgeting, is $42.4 million. This is another breakdown, I guess a different way to see it. So for the $42.8 million, we also, in all of our accounts, we break it down by object code. And these are your main categories, right? We have our payroll costs, all of our contracted services, all of our supplies and materials. Other expenditures, that's usually where your travel, your meals, things like that, things of that nature. Our debt service and capital outlay. So if you can see there, the bulk of it is our payroll. It's $29,637,852. So that's about almost 70%.
So I was looking for the pie chart.
Yeah, no, so, and I think we do, there is a pie chart a little bit later on, yeah. So it's similar to, just like, 3/4 of our funding comes from the state, well, 3/4 of our budget is taken up by payroll. And again, just to kind of emphasize a little bit, our payroll cost is not just our salaries and wages, it's also our benefits, taxes, our substitute costs, extra duty, overtime, things like that, stipends, that's all payroll costs. And then the other big one, of course, is our debt service, and I'll get a little bit more into that one. That one increased, obviously, because of the bond, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And this is our appropriations by function, right? So this is one of the requirements, we have to present it to the board, by function. And again, our main one is our instruction. If you can see the very first one, almost half of our total budget goes to instruction, and that's a combination of all of our teacher salaries, our teacher aides, and the regular operating budget that we give them. The other ones that are, substantial is, of course, our food service. When we feed our kids, that's about $3.2 million. That's about 8.3% of our budget. And our maintenance, right? Just like a lot of districts, maintenance and operations, it does cost to maintain the district, maintain our facilities. And we budgeted about $5.5 million. That's about 14% of our total budget. And again, our debt services, as I mentioned earlier, that's about $3.1 million. That's about 8% of our total budget.
Mr. Cespedes,
Yes.
for plant maintenance and operation was a decrease. Is it because we I know we mentioned earlier that we may have a 5% reduction across the board, is that it? Or-
Right, well, again, because of the bond, and we're hoping to improve some of our facilities, we're hopeful that we don't have to use as much of the budget. But yes, that's the goal.
I remember that, okay, thank you.
On to the next slide. And this is just appropriation by the state programs, right? We have different programs, by the state, like our GT, our CTE, our special ed, bilingual, state comp, early education, our CCMR, and our dyslexia. And those are just the appropriations we get, per each one. And here's the pie chart. And so again, just like we were saying, right, about 70% of our total budget, goes to salaries. And again, about 7%, 7.5% to debt service, and about 10% goes to our supplies and materials, right? And I think a big chunk of that is with our maintenance and operations, and of course with our campuses, the budgets that they're getting. On the next one, we'll go ahead and be talking a little bit about a comparison of our current proposed budget to our prior year budget. We're going on to the next slide. And in this one, I'm not gonna go into detail all of those, but there was a couple of things that I wanted to show you all. We look at the last two columns, the total and then the last year's, and we go all the way to the bottom. So you see for the proposed budget, we have, again, the 42.4 million that I've been talking about. And if we compare that to last year's total budget of 39.1 million, so our budget did increase by about 3.3 million, 3,358,663. And the main reason for that is if we look at the column that says payroll, and if we look at the column that says debt service, if we look at those two all the way to the bottom and we compare them to prior year, our overall payroll this year that we're proposing compared to last year went up by a little bit over $2 million. And our debt service, again, because of the recent bond that was passed, it increased by about 1.3 million. So the 2 million and the 1.3, that's the main increase from last year's budget to this year's budget. The next slide is now we're comparing it just to the general fund. So here we're taking out debt service and food service. And again, if we look at the last two columns, same as the prior one, if we can focus on the last two columns, the total and the total for last year, we're proposing a general fund budget of 36.1 million, 36,137,574. If you compare that to last year's, the 34,376,904, that's an increase of about 1.7 million. And the majority of that came from, if you look at our payroll costs, if you go all the way to the bottom, it actually increased by about $2 million, right? So what does that say about the rest of it? If our overall budget only increased by 1.7, but we increased our payroll by 2 million, that means that we kind of had to take from some of the other ones. And that's the ones that we were talking about earlier, about doing some reductions and things of that nature. And that was to be able to help and propose, raises for everybody. We'll go on to the next slide. Again, this is a breakdown for our food service. And our food service is pretty comparable compared to last year. Again, the last two columns, we're proposing a budget for food service of $3,458,462. So it increased almost about 300,000 compared to the prior year. And again, there was a slight increase in payroll because of the proposed salary increases. And then a bit of increase in our supplies and materials, and that's mostly from the USDA donated commodities, right? So they are able to help us in purchasing some of the food. So we budgeted that in there this year. And we go on to the next slide, and this is just a breakdown on our debt service. And this one's a little bit more simplified, right? It's just under function 71, which is our debt service. And if you compare it to last year to this year, it increased about 1.3 million. And again, that's because of the passing of the bond. We're going out to sell those bonds in mid-July and bring that to the board for approval. And of course, starting next year, then we'll have those first bond payments for the new bonds. Now I'll go over really quick on the 25-26 proposed tax rate. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we can go on to the next slide. This is just a proposed tax rate. We'll be coming back to the board in September to officially adopt the tax rate. Right now, there's still several things that we're trying to hash out, right? We're still pending the certified tax rule from the county appraisal district. We're still trying to see if there's gonna be any additional compression based on these property values. And then the other thing is the selling of the bonds, right? And then that's when we'll know at what rate they're sold and how our amortization schedule is gonna look like. But just to kind of summarize, you know, if you look at the maintenance and operations, tax rate, it went down from last year. Last year was about 0.75, about 75 cents. And that went down to about 71 cents, and that's due to compression from the state. And, you know, that's something that Mr. Cavazos and I have been discussing, right, you know, how much more will the state be reducing compression? And I know they're trying to do some property tax relief for them, I don't wanna get too into
Yeah,
it.
and it could change, you know, because of the additional $40,000 homestead exemption that the governor signed. It'll go to the voters in November and certainly it's gonna pass. The compression, some of that compression could be based off of that. TEA does a calculation, and we submit it to them and they certify it. So we're still waiting for that, but we're thinking about, that's more or less where it's gonna be. Could be a little bit higher, but, you know, we're still waiting.
And of course, on the debt service, you know, last year we had about a 20-cent tax rate on our debt service, and again, with the bonds, we're looking to see around, you know, 28 cents or so, about an 8-cent increase. But overall, I think the main point for this, and when we present it again, is we do expect to see an overall, in our total tax rate, a net decrease, so maybe around 3 or 4 cents.
Yeah, we had a conversation with the financial advisor this morning, and they're looking, selling the bonds, it's certainly for July 21st, and looking at a rate under 5%. She mentioned about 4.8. We're hoping it might be a little bit better by the time it sells, so,
Right.
so it's better than, you know, than the 5% that we had estimated.
Let's go on to the next slide. And this one right here is a lot of data to look at, but the main one that I wanted to look at again was the last two columns. And if we look maybe where it says taxable value, which is about the fourth set of numbers there on the last one. And that's again what we're talking about, you know, property tax values have grown about 10% compared to last year. But we're still pending, once they incorporate the $140,000 homestead exemption that Mr. Cavazos was talking about, and there was a couple of other property tax relief for the over 65 and disabled. That one increased from 10 to 60,000. I know there's a little bit of property tax relief also for business owners. So that, in layman's terms, what that's gonna do, it's gonna reduce the taxable value. And there's even a possibility that the property tax value that we have, the certified tax rate might be even the same or lower than the prior year, even though overall there's a 10% increase in property values. And then the main one here that I wanted to show is if we go around mid-page where it says new construction. Y'all see where it says new construction there? Again, if we go to the last the last two columns where it says 36 million and 61 million. As you can see, in the last 2 years, there's been a lot of new construction here within La Feria. And this is all for the single families, right? We've seen a lot of subdivisions building, and this is the result of that. It's about $100 million in property values in the last 2 years. So that's something that we'll continue to look at and monitor as well. And this is just supplementary information, mainly just to give you all a list of all of our federal and other state funds. The total that we expect to have on these is about $4,453,317. And our biggest grants obviously is our ESSA, our Title I Part A, which is about $1 million. Of course, we have our ACE grant, which is a really great grant, about $1,150,000. And then our SAFE grant. And that we're about $600,000 for next year.
So for the strong foundations, we've got 200,000 for our secondary. We just found out that we got another 305,000 for math. And so that will be added to this as well. So
Yes.
that's other funds that we don't have to spend in order to support our new math curriculum.
I think we just got the award letter.
We just got it.
We haven't received the notice, but we got the award letter from regional.
So we'll be adding, so almost about $500,000 for math.
Good job.
And then we go on to the last slide. This is just a breakdown of all of our outstanding debt. This is what we paid through our interest and sinking fund. And there you can see the outstanding balance for all of our unlimited tax bonds. And of course, we've added in there an estimate, right, of our bond series 2025. So total general obligations, we have about $34,835,000. And due within the next year, which again, our bond payments are in August and in February, For the 25-26 fiscal year, we're gonna be paying about 1.3 million in principal and about $1.5 million in interest. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question, for the principal. Don't ever try to drive in the expressway at 5 o'clock. Everybody, all 3 lanes, like everybody was leaving Harwich. On page 25, and this is more of a question for Ms. Golden. I see a difference of 53, I guess thousands, I think you could call it, under guidance and counseling, and that's not really enough for another counselor. Is that just to add different services or the difference in page?
I'm trying to find it.
It's trying.
Page 25.
On the property values?
No, I bet.
Guidance and
Maybe I got the
counseling.
wrong page number. I see, you're right.
20?
No.
Yeah, I think it's
got,
20.
I thought it said 20. Oh, no, 20, sorry.
Okay.
Page 20. If you look at guidance and counseling, we look at the difference from last year to this year. There's about 53,000. What is it? I don't know this.
Right, because of the raises, ma'am, that's why it's, yes. So because of the raises that everyone is getting, that's about the total sum. So that's why a lot of our payroll went up. And again, as Mr. Cespedes said, we have about $2 million more in payroll because of that.
I think in the other budget book that y'all had received, I think on Monday, I know Mr. Cavazos at work, we broke it all down, and if you see, almost every single function, the main increase is in salaries because of the proposed salary increases.
And what falls under community service besides the director? Do you have aides or, because I know that one is a difference.
Yeah, so on that one, it's exactly right, ma'am. So there we have a couple of our parental aides that help out. Previously, some of them we used to fund through title, but because the title has been going out a little bit, some of these we've moved to local. So there, you do see quite a bit of almost a $70,000 increase.
Mhm.
So that's, and actually that's our director, coordinator, we used to pay through title. And now we're having to move these to local because again, our title allotments have been decreasing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Cespedes?
You did a great job.
You did a great job.
Awesome.
Yes, you did.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
And
Good
he
job.
Thank you for
didn't
saying it
refer
first.
to you one time, sir.
It is now 6:03 PM, and we'll close the open public meeting and reconvene to the regular scheduled board meeting. The first item to consider in possible action is discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the 25-26 teacher salary schedule and compensation plan.
Yes, ma'am. So good afternoon, Board President, Ms. Torres, board members. So again, we're bringing for approval, for consideration and approval for the board to approve the 25-26 compensation plan. So I'll briefly go over it. So again, in the teacher salary hiring schedule, we've proposed to increase the starting pay by $2,000. It used to be at $50,500. So now for a teacher with 0 years experience, it would go up to $52,500. For our teachers with 1 or 2 years experience, we want to give an increase of $2,100.
And
So
for
those-
those three,
yeah.
we did not get funding
Yeah, so
from the state.
exactly, and that's what I was about to say. So for those, recall that we did not get any funding from the state for those. And then, so the next two lines, the teachers for 3 to 4 years experience, they would get a $4,000 increase, and that again is coming from the teacher retention allotment from TEA, and then any teacher with 5 or more years experience it would be $8,000. And again, this is because our district has 5,000 or less students. And so hopefully the goal for that is to make us a lot more competitive with other neighboring districts. The other proposals that we have is for all of our professional staff, it would be a 3% increase off the midpoint, and then all of our hourly staff, it would be a 4% off the midpoint.
Mr. Cespedes, I have
Yes.
a question. I'm a teacher with 5 years' experience, so next year I'll be at 60,000, is that correct, or?
Yeah, so if you look at the pay, right?
Uh-huh.
So for example, a teacher last year that was in step 4 was at 51,700, right? So now they've completed 5 years.
Right.
So this year they'll be at step 5. So they'll be
Okay.
exactly like you said, they'll be at 59,700, so that's an increase of $8,000.
Right, okay. And another question,
Yes, ma'am.
and I don't know, maybe it's based on market adjustment or just based on the state or whatever, but I noticed that some years it's like a $300 difference, other years a $400 difference, 500, why the differences?
So that's always been, you know, the district's discretion to do that. You know, we always wanna make sure that, you know, the higher you go, you do get a bit of an increase.
Okay.
And so those, we always wanna make sure that we do have different, but there is no exact,
Oh,
guidance that they tell us it has to be exactly this amount from prior year.
oh, okay, but all of our teachers are supposed to be, I think we've
Yes,
given that.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like Alex said, yeah, that's a, you know, district, you know, decision as far as how much of a difference you wanna have from one year to the next year.
Okay.
You know, and some districts have, you know, $500, $600, $700, or some have $100 or $200 difference from one to the next step.
Okay.
But it's gonna vary every year.
Right. Okay, well, that's fine. And I should have asked this when I was working, but I never did. What does it mean 3% off the midpoint? I've never
Right,
asked
so
that.
if you look at our compensation plan, that's up in the website, right, or if you guys have it there. If you look at your compensation plan, you know, we always have a minimum starting
Right,
salary,
Right,
and then of course you have your midpoint and your maximum. So the midpoint, that's where we get the percentage off, so whatever the midpoint, they have to look at their pay grade,
okay,
whatever pay grade they fall on, they have to look at their number of days. So
okay,
then they go to the chart and look at that, their days, and look at the midpoint, multiply it by the 3%, and that's the increase that they're gonna see in their pay for next year.
okay, so a first year teacher will be at a minimum, right? They won't be
Yes.
midpoint.
Right, so teachers, remember, teachers are on different hiring schedules, so
Oh, yeah.
teachers, yeah, so
Okay,
teachers.
Hello, yeah,
Yeah.
not teachers, admin,
Right,
basically.
so,
Anybody
like,
else?
yeah, we could use an example, right, like if we have a teacher aide, and
Right,
they get hired, right, to do, you know, special ed inclusion, and there are 187 days, they look at their pay grade, 187 days, they look at the midpoint total salary multiplied by, in this case, our aide would be 4%,
Right.
and then they know that that would be their increase,
okay,
they could divide it by 12, and that's the monthly increase.
okay.
So
Of
we
course,
have-
of course, with that, you have, you know, your federal withholding tax, TRS and all
Right,
that, so.
right, right. I guess my question
And I think this is gonna answer it. So we
Okay.
had somebody that came in this week and said, I've been working for the district for 25 years.
right,
And I'm a principal,
Right.
but I'm a principal on year 2. So when you get to this pay grade, you don't get 22 years of credit because you've only been a principal for 2
2
years.
years.
So it's like you're starting back with your principalship. You do get a little bit of credit, like a half.
Right.
You do get a little bit of credit.
And there's different factors that we look at, right, because one of the things that we always bring up is like, well, at what point am I gonna get to midpoint?
or
And
maximum.
the answer to that is, well, the midpoint and even our starting salary, they're kind of moving targets because just as the years go on, inflation and all that, the market out there is adjusting and people's salaries are going up. So
Right.
likewise, our district, right, that's why we always would like to have TASB maybe every 3 or 4 years do a review of our compensation plan so that they can adjust us to be more competitive, right, be more to market, that's what they call it. And so the midpoint's always kind of like a target that we wanna get to, but it's, as we go on, salaries are increasing, so it's a bit of a moving target.
Okay, so do we have anybody, and like 25 years experience but hitting the maximum or more, or not necessarily?
It's very hard, right, to get to the maximum.
Okay.
I mean, there could be cases, right, depending on experience or,
Okay,
some fields, right, if they're very hard to get positions, that we have, I know, where I came from, it was very hard to get technology and special ed staff. So
Okay.
sometimes, you know, you do have, or try to be a little bit more competitive, but yeah, we always try to make sure that nobody goes past the maximum. Otherwise, what TASB usually recommends is you review their position,
okay.
maybe it needs to be adjusted to a different pay grade.
So basically, you just look at the midpoint for
Or
all.
for the raises,
Yeah.
for raises,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, just to kind of look at numbers, somebody that's closer to the maximum, they may not get their 3% of what they are because that's above the midpoint.
That's correct,
And
right.
somebody that's
correct.
at the minimum is actually gonna probably get more than 3%.
Right,
from where they're
exactly, because
currently
you're
at.
right, and that's why we say off the midpoint, because some people might think, well, it's gonna be 3% off my current salary, no, it's 3% off the
The
midpoint.
Okay.
midpoint.
Like Mr. Brianna said, if somebody out there is above the midpoint, then their increase, they could say, well, it's actually a little bit less than my actual salary.
I see,
Yeah.
okay,
But for the most part, most of them should be at, or the salary should be at or higher.
okay. Thank you, sir.
I have one question.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
On the LaFerrier ISD coaching stipends,
Yes,
where it says number, what does that mean, like year or number of person?
yeah, that's the number of coaches. for
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yes, yes, ma'am. So you can see right there, right, for example, for football, we have, the most assistants there, and then going down for.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the number of coaches for that position.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Something that we're adding to this is we're adding, Coach Foster asked to add soccer and golf at the junior high.
Oh, awesome. That is so awesome.
Any other?
Good report.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler.
Another change, and I think that you saw it because we went to K-5 and 6 through 12, we adjusted our department head, the teacher stipends, because it's not doing this anymore. So those were some adjustments we made as well. So now the 6 through 8 is very much like the high school in stipends. It's over here, right here. So these look very much like high school because it's 6 through 8. There's one person for all 3 grades instead of one per grade.
Madam President, I move that we approve the 2025-2026 teacher salary schedule and compensation plan.
And do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Martinez. It's been moved and seconded to approve the 25-26 teacher salary schedule and compensation plan. Any further discussion? All I wanna say is that this is obviously very much needed for our staff.
Yes.
They deserve this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carried, 5-0. Next item is a discussion, consideration to approve the 24-25 budget amendment.
Yes, so, thank you, Ms. Castillo. So we're just bringing the final budget amendment for the 24-25 fiscal year, right? So as we're closing out the year, we're running reports, and what we have to do, one of the things we have to make sure is that by function, that none of our budgets are over. And so here we're just bringing forth a couple of adjustments we need to do. So we're asking for the first one to move about $5,000 from function 51 for maintenance to cover under function 32. And then the other one would be in our food supplies. Now that one is just increasing it by 40,000. And remember that for food service, they generate their own revenue. So this, we're increasing both the revenue and the expenditures. And that's again, just to make sure that at the end, when we're on our budgets, that everything's within balance.
Any questions of Mr. Cespedes?
Madam President, I move we approve the budget amendment for the 2024-2025 school year.
And do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Martinez. It's been moved and seconded to approve the budget amendment for the 24-25 school year. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 5-0. Discussion, consideration to approve the budget for fiscal year 25-26.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So as we discussed in the public hearing, we're bringing forth a balanced budget for the fiscal year 25-26. We are requesting that the board is required to approve the budget, the general fund, the food service, and the debt service. And again, just to summarize, from our local maintenance, our general fund, it would be $36,137,574. For food service would be $3,458,462. And for interest and sinking, which is our debt service, would be $2,885,338. So the total proposed budget that we're bringing forth for approval is $42,481,374.
Any questions of Mr. Cespedes? Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move we approve to adopt the budget for the fiscal year 2025-2026.
And do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Martinez. It's been moved and seconded to approve the budget for the fiscal year 25-26. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 5-0. Discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve request for proposal for third-party administrator for 403B administration, IRC section 125, an optional insurance program.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So the district, we did solicit proposals for a third-party administrator. These are the companies, the organizations that help us with enrolling our staff to their insurance products, aside from the health insurance. This does not include the health insurance. This is all the other, benefit products, right? We received 4 proposals, and we did review them, administration reviewed, we ranked them, and we did interview the 4 companies, and we are recommending, First Financial Administrators, to be the third party.
And is that different from last year's?
Yes, it is. So for quite a bit of time, the district has had Bay Bridge administrators. They were one of the TPAs that did submit a bid. Again, we felt that this one would be good for our employees. Again, these are all products, benefit products offered to our employees that are actually 100% paid by them, like the dental, vision, their 403B, short-term disability, things like that.
We actually, many years ago, worked with this particular company, Mr. Cavazos.
Yeah, it was, probably 20 years ago, maybe. First Financial, they do a lot of third-party administration for school districts, around Texas. So we did interview all 4 of them, and we felt that, these individuals will bring the best value for our employees as far as benefit goes. The district doesn't pay anything with this, they administer the plan. They help us with enrolling our employees into the different options. So we feel that if we can have more employee benefit options for the employees to partake in, we felt that First Financial would be a good company. We had the second runner-up was also a good company, Higginbotham, and it was really a toss-up between both of them, but we felt that, we would want to recommend First Financial.
Any questions of Mr. Cespedes or Mr. Cavazos?
No, Madam President, I move that we approve First Financial Administrators as the third-party administrator for 403B administration, IRC Section 125, and optional insurance program.
And do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Martinez. It's been moved and seconded to approve First Financial Administrators as a third-party administrator for 403B and so forth. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 5-0. Next item, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve procurement method for bond projects.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So as required by Board Policy CV Legal under facility construction, the board is required to approve procurement method before the district does go out for any type of advertising. So we are recommending, for this action item, we're recommending that the board approve the competitive sealed proposal method as the procurement method to be able to do a majority of our facility construction projects now that we'll be doing all these with the bond funds. We believe that this is gonna give us, the best value for our project, so this is the one that we're bringing forward. One of the 3 methods.
Questions?
Madam President, I move we approve competitive sealed proposals as the procurement method for future bond construction projects.
And do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Martinez. It's been moved and seconded to approve competitive sealed proposals as a procurement method for future bond construction projects. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 5-0. Discussion, consideration to approve the interlocal contracts procurement method for construction projects under 200,000.
Thank you, ma'am. So again, as I previously mentioned, we are also recommending for the board to approve for the smaller construction projects with the bonds, we have some that are larger amounts, some that are on the smaller amounts. And again, as we're working with these, we're trying to work on several projects at the same time. For some of these, what we're asking is that the board approve us to use our interlocal contract procurement method, which is, commonly known as your purchasing cooperatives, for any projects that are at $200,000 or less. So again, this will allow us to solicit proposals, request some quotes, and bring those back to the board for approval. And I wanted to mention, just like the other ones, this is just to approve the procurement method. Whatever we do select, it still has to come back to the board for approval.
Questions?
Madam President, I move we approve using interlocal contracts as the procurement method for small construction projects under 200,000.
And do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Martinez. It's been moved and seconded to approve interlocal contracts as a procurement method for small construction projects under 200,000. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carried, 5-0. Discussion, consideration to approve the design build procurement method for LED lighting retrofit projects.
So again, so this is the third procurement method that we're bringing to the board, for approval. The design build procurement method, again, is also an allowable method for, for us to solicit proposals, on different construction projects. We believe that this method will be, the best approach on one specific, which is our LED lighting projects. And so we're asking that, here we would still have to, just like the other one, solicit proposals for design build companies, and again, bring it back to the board for approval. They would help us, from beginning to end, design and do the renovations as needed. Any questions on that?
Madam President, I move we approve design build as the procurement method for the LED lighting retrofit projects.
I have a motion, do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Martinez. It's been moved and seconded to approve using design build as a procurement method for the LED lighting retrofit projects. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carried, 5-0. It is now 6:22 PM, and we are moving into closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Thank you, sir. It is now 6:35 PM. We are now reconvened to open session. Let the record show that the superintendent approved the resignation of the following staff: Aaron Romero, Christine Berlino, Rubisela Vasquez, Neida Moreno Cruz, and Melissa Garza. And let the record show that the superintendent approved contracts for Newton District teachers for the 25-26 school year as per authority granted to Superintendent and DC Local Paula Alfaro, John Smith, Peter Galvan, Max Ortiz, and Jessica Vasquez. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Madam President. I move that we offer contracts as discussed in closed session for the 2025-2026 school year to the following: Jessica Garcia, 1-year probationary contract; Antolina Llanos, 1-year probationary contract; Ruby Tijerina, 1-year probationary contract.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Martinez. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. If there is no other business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion by
Everybody.
Mrs. Johnson and a second by Mr. Briones. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed, same sign. It is now 6:36 PM, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I sign the thing.